Shane Murphy here, entrepreneur and restaurant marketing expert. Welcome to the Restaurant Rocket Fuel podcast, where we discuss marketing strategies that leading restaurateurs are using to grow and expand their restaurants. This podcast is sponsored by Boostly, the text marketing company that works with every point of sale and online ordering vendor in the industry. No contracts, no monthly fees. Learn more at boostly.com. Welcome back, everybody. Today we're here with Eric Cacciatore. He's the founder and host of the Restaurant Unstoppable movement and podcast. And over the last decade, he's interviewed well over 1,000 leading restaurateurs to create one of the most comprehensive resources for running your restaurant available to the industry. Eric, I am so excited to have you with us today. Thanks for joining and sharing more about your story.
Oh, man, it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me, man. Can't wait to get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe before we do just dive in, can you tell us a little bit more about your background and your Restaurants Unstoppable as well?
Yeah, of course. Before I dive into that, I am curious. This is the second time somebody has called Restaurant Unstoppable a movement, and I'm totally cool with it. What is your source? I'm curious because I'm wondering if it's published out there somewhere that Restaurant Unstoppable is a movement, and I'm cool with it because I think it is a movement, but like I've never published that anywhere. So what is your source?
It's on your website. I think it talked about it in the headline of your website.
Okay, nice.
And I was like, I see this as a podcast, but I do believe like this is more of a movement of our industry needs content and resources for operators, both new and old, to be able to really run their business really well. There's the business side of restaurants, and there's the food side and the like engagement side. And it's really hard to be well-rounded, and we need this type of movement and content to be produced to just help people make the most of the opportunities in front of them.
I'm on the website. I do see what you're talking about now. It does say that the driving force behind Restaurant Unstoppable movement. I like that. I think we should be more into the movement. I recently revamped my website, and yeah, they're doing a good job. I'm not working on it. I have other people doing it.
You got some creatives creating the movement. I love it.
Yeah, I love it. So to answer your question, I grew up in the restaurant industry. My parents opened a restaurant when I was 3 years old. They had it for 10 years. I saw how hard my parents worked. I had dreams of opening my own restaurant. My parents were like, "What? Are you kidding? Have you learned nothing from our experience? Go get a real job. Like we work so hard, so you don't have to." So I ended up becoming a commercial pilot. I did that from the time I was 17 to the time that I was 26, realized that aviation wasn't my calling, as a young man. And then I was like, you know what? Like I could continue down this path that just doesn't feel right. And I could be unhappy in just, not doing what I was meant to do, or I can make the hard decision to go back to school for marketing and hospitality, or to resign from aviation, focus on what I truly love, which is hospitality. And I made that hard decision with $200,000 of school loan debt. And I thought, if I can't work in restaurants because I would never be able to pay off my debt, then I want to work with restaurants. And I was trying to figure out what could I do to make some decent cheddar working with restaurant owners, because really what I love about the restaurant industry is the people that work in the industry. It's just the most fun I've ever had doing any kind of work. And I'm not afraid of working hard. So I thought I'd get into sales. And then I thought wine sales would be interesting. So I took a job as an assistant winemaker. And I was around this time I went back to school for marketing and hospitality. And it was mostly to defer my school loans because it was like $1,100 a month. And if I went back to school part-time, I didn't have to pay my school loans. And it was cheaper to go back to school part-time at a community college than it was to pay off my school loans. So I was working the system. But during this time, I discovered podcasts when I was working at the winery to learn more about wine, and I just fell in love. I was listening to 16 hours of audio a day. That's an 8-hour shift at times 2. Like in the cellar all day by myself, listening to entrepreneurial marketing, personal growth type podcasts. And it was just a game changer for me. Being dyslexic, like I don't really enjoy reading. So finding a medium that lets me absorb information and get inspired. I wanted to recreate what I fell in love with, for the restaurant industry. There wasn't a solid restaurant podcast in 2013. So I was looking for it, and the idea came into my head to create what I was looking for. And that was a little more long-winded than I wanted it to be. Hopefully it wasn't too long of a answer for you.
Well, no, I love that. And it's awesome because you were so hungry for the content and could see, hey, there's an opportunity and an opening here. I want more of this. And you were in a position to actually go and help create that. So yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah. One of the quotes I heard that was all I really needed. The inspiration was, if you're looking for something and you can't find it, there's a good chance that you're not the only person looking, and there's an opportunity there. The second quote I heard was, if you help enough other people achieve what they want in life, you can have anything in life. And it just felt like that really resonated with me, because I wanted to work in restaurants, or at least my dream was to open a restaurant, but that wasn't an option for me because I was in $200,000 in school loan debt. So I was like, well, if I'm not in the position to open my restaurant, if I help enough other people who are in the position, maybe one day it'll be my turn.
Yeah. And, you're coming up on over 11 years now of doing these podcast interviews, right?
Yeah, we're in our 10th year right now. So it's been about 10 and a half years.
Wow. That's so cool. And so when you think about that over the last, 10 and a half years, what are some of the greatest learnings as it relates to restaurant marketing that you've been able to suck out of the restaurateurs that you've had the opportunity to chat with?
Oh man, that's a loaded question. And this isn't super techie. I still believe, at the end of the day, we are all human, and we might be living in a world, that is beholden to Moore's law, where technology is improving at an exponential rate. But at the end of the day, we're still human beings. And I think that, with all the tech in the world, the most important thing is four walls marketing. You can invest in all the technology and the time and energy to, get the latest school thought in regards to technology. But at the end of the day, we're still feeding people and we're making people happy, and you can drive them to your business. But if you don't keep them there, by giving them great service and community and love, then they're just going to go someplace else. So I think, the biggest lesson at the end of the day for me, is really, four walls marketing will always be king. Word of mouth marketing will always be king. How you make people feel is the most important thing. But that being said, staying top of mind is also really important, because there's more restaurants than ever, and there's more people jockeying for that guest attention. So I think today the most important thing you can do is put all of your energy into SEO. If a lot of people will talk about the importance of social media marketing, for me, I think that that's not necessarily the most important thing. I think direct mail marketing is the most important, or I would say SEO, because you have to be discovered. And then from there, getting people to your website, converting from I just discovered your business to I'm now ordering from you online. And then from there, I'd say direct mail marketing. So anything, email lists, SMS, and any type of way you can automate that and streamline that process is really valuable.
Yeah. So there's obviously the four walls concept of, I have to have a good business. I have to make sure I'm taking care of the people coming in, giving them the good experience, giving them reasons why they would come back, and talk about the experience. But then when it's hey, I need to get discovered in the first place outside of word of mouth, it's the SEO and getting discovered to the first online order. There's kind of a different pulse when you're talking about the online side versus the direct mail of, I'm an offline customer that I'm trying to attract. How do you see the balance between those two things? Is it equal and you have to kind of balance them both simultaneously? Is it one before the other? How do you think about that?
What am I balancing again? Help me understand.
like SEO of like, hey, I'm trying to drive online traffic to my website and get to that online order, versus a direct mail piece where, this is somebody offline and I'm getting something physical in front of that person.
How do you balance the priority between those two?
Yeah.
I mean, today you really have to be omnidirectional. I told myself I wasn't going to use this expression because I know that you guys are a marketing tool, and I'm not saying that marketing is bad wholly, but I do think that marketing is the bane of human existence. I'll just get it out there. It's one of these things that it's a necessary evil, right? And I think that, as in terms of like finding the balance, I worry sometimes that owners are out of fear, always focusing on how can I promote myself? How can I stay on top of mind? How can I get as many eyes on me and my business as possible? And the job to do that is so overwhelming, especially for an independent operator who maybe doesn't have a marketing firm hired out for them. So in terms of the balance, it's like, again, at the end of the day, you can do all you can to drive traffic into your business. If they show up and they don't enjoy themselves, if they're not having a good in-store experience, then they're never going to come back. So I guess to answer your question in terms of balancing between SEO and the SMS direct mail marketing, I think SEO is a one-stop shop. I think most of your how do I say this? In terms of SEO and website, don't try to do it yourself. That shouldn't be something that you're doing. It's way better for you to budget a monthly, whatever the fee might be, depending on whatever company you go with, to have them just handle the website, handle the SEO. I think it might be for like $50 a month. Don't quote me exactly. You could have a company that does web design, that does SEO, that does all that stuff, that's constantly evolving. Your website management tool, whatever that is. I think it's more important to manage the communication, the messaging that you're putting out there with SMS or direct mail marketing, email. Like, more of your energy should be going into that for sure, because you should be outsourcing your SEO, your website design, and all that stuff, in my personal opinion. Again, that was a long-winded answer, but at the end of the day, it's worth nothing if people aren't enjoying themselves in the four walls of your business.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot, and it comes up very often in the podcast that if you don't have like the good fundamentals for your restaurant under the hood, no amount of marketing is gonna save you.
Yeah,
like, you have to have that good experience. And I'm also a big believer that every restaurant has a unique story to tell. And the best person to tell that story is going to be you as the restaurant owner. And putting that out there, like, is frightening. Like, you're running a business, you're busy, and sometimes it's really scary to be vulnerable and put your story out there, and to be the one on camera, or putting your voice to it, or even just texting it out. You've had a really unique experience where you go around and do really in-depth interviews with restaurant operators of all types. It doesn't matter, like, if you are like have your name in lights in a big city, you really try to get down to the story of a lot of these independents. When you think of the story that they have to tell, what advice would you give like a newer operator or someone who's afraid to tell their story of their restaurant in like a public facing setting? What would you say to those people from the insights that you've gathered by doing these thousands of interviews?
So is the question, what am I doing to help people understand why it's important to open up and share your story? Let's go down that path, and then just taking like advice to someone who's afraid to tell that story as well. Okay. I mean, public, what is it? The most common fear is like public speaking, right? It's like more than like death or something like that. The number one public fear. I think at the end of the day, the more open, the more vulnerable you get. The more you open up, the more you expose yourself, the more trust you're going to build. There's nothing you can say. At the end of the day, we're all human. And I think a lot of times we get in our own head of like, oh, like what is everybody going to think of me? Like me, my image, me. Are we allowed to swear in this podcast? This is a business podcast. I'll clean it up. Nobody gives an F about you and what's going on in your life. They don't. They like at the end of the day, they're all in their own head. What you think is a huge deal that's earth shattering and it's gonna change everyone's opinion of you. Like they're gonna get over it. If anything, they'll admire you more for being so vulnerable. And if you think the analogy I like to use, you think of a dog, you meet a dog for the first time. And if it's if it's a timid dog, what is it probably going to do? It rolls over on its back and it exposes its belly because it knows that if it gets vulnerable, you will trust it. And vulnerability is probably the biggest, fastest way to earn trust. And again, like get out of your own head because what you think is a big deal, whatever you're most ashamed of or embarrassed about, nobody cares. Only you do. Like get over yourself. It's going to be okay.
I love that message. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And once you take that first step, it always gets easier to do it in the future. If you do that consistently, you fall into a rhythm and it gets better.
Yeah, you got to give trust before you get it. And the way you give trust is giving people vulnerable information about yourself. You trust them to not look at you differently after they know your deepest, darkest secret or whatever the reality is. But being caught in a lie, saying one thing and having the something else be the reality is the fastest way to lose trust. To misrepresent yourself.
I saw this a lot during COVID when 2020 started happening. Restaurants that I had never heard their story before, all of a sudden they started sharing their story, and it was forced out of them because we're going to close and we're going to die, or we open ourselves up to the community and say, hey, we're struggling, we're having a hard time, but here's why this is important and we're something worth keeping around. And there are a few people that I've noticed that from that moment on, they kept sharing that type of story and kept talking about their roots and the challenges that their restaurant has gone through. And they're absolutely thriving today. But many others stopped sharing that once they were able to open up normally again. And there is a difference between the people who maintain that connection with their audience. And the restaurant industry has experienced several waves of challenges throughout the years, whether it's labor, food costs, you name it. And it has cycled through many different things. When you look over the next year or two, what are some of the challenges that you expect the restaurant industry to be facing?
Man, that's a loaded one. There's so many things coming down the barrel. Over the next year or two, in terms of challenges, I think we're going to see the cost of labor continue to go up, the cost of goods to continue to go up. More restaurants are going to be opening. I think, more. There's going to be more diversification to more options for the consumer, more distractions for the consumer. You can get, like today, what I mean by diversification, you can get food, you can go eat in a restaurant like we are traditionally understand. We can pick it up. We can have it delivered to us. We can use ghost kitchens. There's, fine dining, full service, quick service, fast casual, fine casual, there are so many options to the consumer. Delivered meal, what is it? Meal kits. That's another whole thing. Or just like frozen meals. Like there's so many ways to get food to the consumer today, and I don't think that's going anywhere. I think if anything, the way the options, the different experiences the consumer will be able to choose from to eat is going to continue to diversify. So I think one of the challenges is just understanding what vertical you belong in, or trying to figure out how to have what you offer meet people at all those different places. You know, like if you're a full service restaurant, how do you meet them at all those touch points? How can you provide an option to get your food to them, whether it be in a monthly meal plan, or if you're looking at improving your delivery game, or you're creating systems for them to pick it up easier? Like how can you meet your guests at every possible touch point? I think, and I think the other big challenge too is that in this dynamic world we live in, dynamic meaning it's constantly changing, constantly evolving. I think we're getting to this point where technology, I mentioned Moore's law earlier, it's improving exponentially, and it's now with AI speeding up that process of evolution in technology. Even like exponential means it gets faster and faster, and that it never stops getting faster. The change of, or the rate of improvement never stops getting faster. And I think we've reached this point where the average mushy human brain can't keep up with the rate of change that technology is improving. So it's like, yeah, all these advancements in technology might be happening, but the average human is overwhelmed by the rate of change. And like they just figure out one thing, 3 months goes by, and now that's outdated tech, you know? And it's just like, oh, this keeping up with that is so overwhelming. So I think I answered your question with a lot of different challenges, but
yeah. And you know, it's one of those things where whenever there are these big challenges, there are opportunities as well, but you have to think and act differently at times. You said something earlier in the podcast of when you're talking about four walls marketing, have that in place, and then just staying top of mind in front of your customers is like the next crucial piece. And in a world where there are going to be more distractions, there are going to be more options, getting beyond just a surface level, like communication with your guest is likely not going to be enough. You're going to want to build that relationship, and it starts in those four walls, and then it expands to how you continue to engage and communicate directly with your audience. You know, we went through a wave over like the last few years where increasingly all of the third parties begin to own the relationship with the guest, and they stay top of mind almost at the expense sometimes of the restaurant themselves. And with all those things that you're describing, I think it's crucial to have that direct relationship and to be able to manage it
right on your own. Yeah. You know, my mission statement is to inspire, empower, and change the industry. Really, it's to change the world through inspiring, empowering, and transforming the industry. And a lot of what I'm trying to do isn't just like to teach the owner the best way to do something, but to also get their heads above the clouds and say, listen, like this industry, the food and beverage industry, the hospitality industry, is responsible for so many ancillary industries that spin out of it. This industry creates opportunity for other industry. And the point I'm trying to make is like what you're talking about with third party. I think the restaurant industry has this history of being guilty of just heads down, grinding, working, focusing on the thing we have to do today. And we're not putting our head above the clouds to see how all these other ancillary adjacent industries are basically just pulling the value out of our industry, or exploiting the people that are working so hard, and not giving them there's no reason why. Here's an example, a perfect example. In New York, I recently came across this article where there are people that are going in purchasing all of the reservations. They have bots that go out and they make all the reservations at all the restaurants, and then they sell those reservations to guests at a premium, like $500 on a Friday night to go to this restaurant. And then what's happening is if they don't sell all the reservations that their bots purchased or made, like they'll cancel sometimes as many as 70% of, or 30%, only like 70% of the reservations actually are fulfilled. And do you think that $600 is going back to the restaurant? No, like somebody is taking that money. So the point I'm trying to make is, I think the owner could be better. I think the industry could be better about communicating and collectively saying, screw that. We like these ancillary companies rely on us. We can choose to not play the game, and they will be forced to play it to our rules. But it's going to have to be from us communicating and talking, again, getting our head out of the clouds and saying, what's going on here? Like, oh wait, they're doing what? They're not giving us any of the customer data. Well, screw this. Let's just not let these companies, like, let's just not use these companies. Like, and will that be painful? Yeah. I mean, but the power of an industry banding together and sharing information, it would happen overnight. Changes would happen if you just stop fulfilling the orders. Like, see how fast, like, there can be a restaurant owner strike, like, we can do it. When those companies depend on us.
Yeah, I mean, these restaurant owners, they really have a lot of power if we combine together. The opportunity
third largest industry in the world, dude. We have so much influence. We just have to get our heads out of our butts. Pardon my language.
Yeah, no, I think it's so true. And I love the mission that you're on, inspiring restaurant owners to, make the most of the opportunities that they have in front of them, because their opportunities are vast and massive. And so thank you for giving to the industry and for everything that you're doing, and thanks for coming on here and sharing some of this gold and wisdom. What's the best way for people to follow you and Restaurant Unstoppable?
The best way, honestly, is to just subscribe to the website, or, to our email list, and to, any player, iTunes, Spotify. Look up Restaurant Podcast. There's going to be a profile of a handsome face talking into a pineapple microphone. That's me. Subscribe. And
very handsome.
Thank you. We're doing a lot of cool stuff right now. Like you said, it's been over 10 years. We have 1,100 interviews recorded, and the show has continued to evolve. And I like to say that our unique selling proposition is trust. And I think the most trusted form of marketing is and will always be word of mouth. So the reason I'm living this lifestyle, the reason why I live in a camper, is so I can go chase the truth and to use word of mouth to be my North Star. And the last question I ask all of my guests is, who do you respect and admire? And that's what I chase is, success recognizes success. And behind every great restaurant's a great person. And we're trying to find those gems, those amazing operators out there. And we're really just trying to collect all the data and, make it as digestible as possible. So, check it out. We'd love to have you join our community, Facebook, Restaurant Unstoppable Network, and I'll stop pitching now.
Awesome. Well, Eric, thank you so much for coming on Restaurant Rocket Fuel today and sharing all of this. Really appreciate it.
Restaurant Unstoppable Podcast is the handle on Instagram. I almost forgot to mention that. Thank you for having me, Shane.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Restaurant Rocket Fuel. And thank you to the amazing restaurateurs that work so hard to provide an amazing guest experience for our communities. Again, this podcast is sponsored by Boostly. To see how we can drive more revenue to your business, visit boostly.com. Don't forget to subscribe and go out there and maximize the potential that you and your business have in front of you.